Hi, thank you. Nothing to hide. In the last couple of months, a number of revelations have come out that what we do online is under surveillance. And the response from many people, if not most people to this, has been that I don't really mind if the government is looking at what I'm doing online. I have nothing to hide. I want those of you in the audience who have nothing to hide, aren't too bothered about the government seeing what you're doing online, to please raise your hand. If you want to stretch your legs, you can even stretch your legs and stand up. So I'll give you another incentive to stand up. So who has nothing to hide? Raise your hands high. Okay, please just keep your hands raised. So now many of you have raised your hands. You have nothing to hide. You're not bothered about someone looking at what you're doing online. I want you to keep your hand raised if you're willing to give me your Facebook password. So at the end of this talk, I want your Facebook password. I want to see what you're doing in Facebook. You've told me that you have nothing to hide, right? And I'm a kind of public person here. I'm speaking before all of you. You can trust me. I'm not going to tell anyone what's in your Facebook. And it's actually, most hands have come down. Let me see if I can get more hands to come up. So there are only maybe 2 or 3 hands still up. So I can tell you this. If you give me your Facebook password, it's going to help curb terrorism. Okay, will more hands go up? Any more hands? Okay, no hands have come up. Okay, you can put your hands down, thanks. I've kind of made a note of all of you. I'll see you after the program. So why is it that many people told me that they have nothing to hide, and yet when I asked for their Facebook password, their hand went down? Is it that they actually have something to hide? I don't believe so. I believe the reason most of you don't want me to have access to your Facebook, to your Gmail, to other accounts that you have online is because who you associate with online and the content of your communication with them, what ideas you exchange, what thoughts you exchange, these things are fundamentally private. Privacy is that space in which we have the freedom to associate with anyone we want, to think any thought we want, to think novel, crazy, outrageous thoughts, to question the powers that be, our government, to question our parents, to question everything. Privacy gives us that space. And when we're under surveillance, privacy, and then subsequently freedom of thought, freedom of association, are by definition impossible. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. That in a free and open society, a mass surveillance is incompatible with a free and open society. And it relates to what we're looking at over here. So what we're looking at over here is an example of what's called a Panopticon. And it's a design for a prison. It's in fact, in my opinion, I think it's one of the most fascinating designs for a building ever created. And the design for this building was created by a philosopher by the name of Jeremy Bentham about 200 years ago. And he was actually really excited about his design for this prison. And let me explain how the prison works, and maybe you'll share some of his enthusiasm. So the way this prison works is that in the tower in the middle, there'll be maybe a couple of guards, 2 or 3 guards. In the back, there are a lot of cells. So there may be hundreds of cells for different prisoners. So let's imagine you're one of the 100 prisoners in one of these cells in the back. The guard in the tower cannot be seen by any of the prisoners. And yet he has an equally effective vantage point to see any one of those prisoners' cells. So imagine that you are one of the prisoners in those cells. What are you going to feel like? What are you going to think? You're going to feel like you're under constant surveillance. So even though there's only one guy there, at any moment of time, you could be being watched. And Jeremy Bentham was really excited about this idea. He described it as a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind in a quantity hitherto without example. And so his quote is really important and it illustrates what the purpose of any surveillance system is. And actually the popularity of this Panopticon and a metaphor as any kind of a surveillance system or even system of power was popularized in the last 30 or 40 years by a French philosopher, Michel Foucault. And what Foucault pointed out and how he looked at Jeremy Bentham's idea is this. is that the purpose of a system of general surveillance, it's not so much to catch you with your hand in the proverbial cookie jar, to catch you doing something wrong. Rather, the idea of a system of surveillance is to force you to internalize the thoughts of those with power over you. So basically, power, what Jeremy Bentham said, thought of mind over mind. And so when we think about, let's see these 5 folks who are going to give me their Facebook passwords at the end of this session. Let's consider them as an example. Excuse me. So I'm going to have their Facebook passwords. Now, how are they going to think in 1 week, in 1 month? So a month from now, let's say one of these gentlemen is going to be sending a message to somebody. And then they'll suddenly think, wait a second here. The person I'm writing, this person is a bit of a controversial person. Alok is reading, has access to my Facebook. He's probably reading everything that I'm doing. So I don't think I want Alok to know that I communicate with that person. Or maybe one of the young women in the back, who's going to give me her Facebook password, maybe she's going to send a message questioning the government in power. And then she thinks, wait a second, Alok is going to be reading this message. I don't think I want him to know that I'm critical of this government. And then she's not going to send the message. So over the first few months, when they know that I'm tracking what they're doing on Facebook, they'll exercise what may be called self-policing or self-censoring, censoring their thoughts and ideas. After a few years, what we could imagine is that they no longer need to consciously censor themselves or think, hey, Alok is watching me. It's going to be internalized. So in other words, criticizing, sharing thoughts, associating with people who they think they might be in danger from associating with, sharing thoughts and ideas which could be considered dangerous, it won't even occur to them to do these things because they would have internalized a different kind of thought structure. And that's the effect of a surveillance system. And that's why fundamentally mass surveillance is incompatible with a free and open society. Without privacy, I have no freedom to associate freely with whoever I want, to investigate freely, to think freely. In fact, can someone help me move to the next slide? Okay, thank you. In fact, the very definition of a totalitarian state is that state in which privacy does not exist. So we can see Mussolini's definition here. Everything within the state. Everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. So the very definition of a totalitarian or a fascist state is a state in which there is no private sphere, no privacy. Every thought that I have, every association that I have has to effectively be in coherence with whatever the state's ideology is. And so it's not surprising that any aspiring totalitarian ruler or government or party, what's one of the first things that they do? It's to set up a secret police or some kind of a surveillance organization to try to find those people who may have ideas contrary to what they believe. And so on a theoretical level, we've discussed how mass surveillance is incompatible with a free and open society. But even on a practical level, let's look at how these secret police and these secret organizations that engage in mass surveillance, how they operate. And the way they operate is basically one where the value of their operations in terms of the security to the state has invariably been negative, and the information that they collect has invariably been abused. If I could, okay, there, that worked now, thanks. So I don't have to, I think, go into a lot of detail in repressive states like the former Soviet Union or the former East Germany, organizations like the KGB and the Stasi. I still had a few people who had their hands up, ready to give me their Facebook passwords here. But I would challenge anyone here to go to any former Soviet state and find someone there who's going to say, I feel insecure because we no longer have the KGB. Or similarly in East Germany, who's going to say, I feel insecure because we no longer have the Stasi. So it's well documented the kind of abuses that went on, let's say, in Stalinist Soviet Union. What's more interesting is that secret police and mass surveillance goes on even in what we consider as free and open societies. So it's gone on, it went on for decades, it goes on to this day, as we know, in the United States, which is, from many observers, the most free and open society in the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about the FBI. So the FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, for decades actually conducted surveillance of a large number of American citizens. They conducted, along with Senator McCarthy, surveillance of those who had explored communist ideas, of anti-war activists, of even conservative societies like the John Birch Society. I want to talk, and even civil rights activists. So let me present just one example here of the kind of abuses that repeatedly went on under Hoover's leadership of the FBI. One of the abuses was with Martin Luther King Jr. So he was an activist who led for civil rights in the United States, civil rights for every citizen of the United States. And he was followed, and the FBI discovered that he was having a number of extramarital affairs. They took that information in an effort to discredit him to many publications. The publications refused to publish this. So what did they do? They sent a package with evidence of his extramarital affairs to his home. And it included a letter which told him that these photographs and this evidence was going to be imminently released publicly. He was going to be discredited, and they effectively encouraged him to kill himself. Whether they meant literally or whether they meant to kill off his protest activities and his dissension within the government was a bit cryptic. So that wasn't clear. But that was the message that the secret police in the United States, a so-called free and open society, sent to a political dissenter. So what we see is that even in societies with a commitment to openness and freedom, when these secret police organizations are set up, they're difficult to control. No politician could get rid of the FBI because they had information about all the politicians. The information they gather is invariably of negative value because they get so much noise. The so-called intelligence is generally irrelevant. And worse than that, they build so much mistrust and distrust, it's of negative value. And then beyond that, the information that they collect about private citizens has without exception been abused. And its usual usage is to curb dissent, to control thought. Now let's move on. How does this relate to the internet today? So I'm part of the team that's created the Epic Privacy Browser. It's a browser that's dedicated to protecting what you browse and search online from being tracked. And we were moved to make this browser for two reasons, basically. One was just that how unbelievably powerful the internet has become. The internet, it's not even fair to call what we create a browser, because we don't browse the internet. Rather, we share our life with the internet. We access knowledge. Over 500 million people a month access knowledge and information from Wikipedia. 1 billion of us every month associate with people without regard for ethnicity, without regard for national boundary, without regard for creed. We share ideas and knowledge and information with them on Facebook, other social networks, through email. We share our desires and other ideas with Google, 1 billion of us every month. So if I had access to your browsing history, I would have better access to your stream of thought than if I spoke with your parents, your spouse, or even your best friends. So the internet was a really important part of our life. And the thing we noticed was that about 1.5 years ago was that every website you visit is under extraordinarily pervasive private company surveillance. So if you look down here in the corner, this is when I visited a webpage at the Times of India website. So you could see there were 24 attempts made to track me by 24 different private organizations. We've actually discovered nearly 2,000 different private organizations tracking to some extent your web browsing online and what searches you do online. And the way this data is used today primarily is to target advertisements to you. So you've probably had the experience that I've had countless times that you research, let's say, a new mobile phone, and then every subsequent website you go to has an ad for that mobile phone there. Literally, sometimes I've been so kind of taken aback by that, I've turned my head looking for who's watching back here, but that's actually not what's going on. It's no one looking at my screen. It's rather that there are thousands of companies that are tracking what web pages I visit across a network of websites and targeting ads to me based on that. And while that's really creepy, the dangers in terms of how this information could be used by the private sector are manifold. They could be used to determine in the future if I get life insurance, health insurance, a driver's license, whether I'm able to get a visa to a different country, even whether I get a job. And then all of this, we kind of knew when we started work on our privacy browser. And then a couple of months ago, Mr. Edward Snowden made these explosive revelations about the extent of government surveillance of what we're doing online. And so what Snowden's revelations reveal are they're primarily in regards to the United States and the NSA, that they are basically intercepting all kinds of data and have profiles on probably kind of almost everyone who accesses the internet and some kind of data about them. But beyond that, it's brought a lot of attention to the fact that actually the United States is not the exception. Most countries in the world are engaging in surveillance of what you're doing online. Here in India, the law is that your internet service provider has to save each and every website you visit for at least 1 year, maybe even beyond that. So they know if you've accessed adult content, if you've done searches for health conditions, if you've had questions of a sexual nature, your internet service provider probably knows that and is storing that data probably indefinitely and could be sharing it with the government. I don't know if this is, if anyone can, okay, great. Someone can help me get to the next map. So anyway, on the next map, what it basically illustrates is that you won't see, you'll see here, you'll need like a magnifying glass if you want to see any blue or green here. So there are virtually no countries that actually have a free internet. Most countries are engaging in some fairly high level of surveillance of what we're doing online. And this is really dangerous. The internet has grown to an extraordinary, to reach an extraordinary number of people precisely because it's open and free. A way that I can, without respect to religion, dogma, nationality, exchange information and knowledge with people all over the world. And that's why over 1 billion people are doing that every month, or accessing knowledge and information as well. But with government surveillance, that threatens that foundation. We know theoretically, and now also practically, that mass surveillance is incompatible with a free and open internet and a free and open society. So I'll just leave you with this final quote. It's from one of the former administrators of the Stasi in East Germany, Wolfgang Schmidt. And so he said this: "It is the height of naivete to think that once collected, this information won't be used. This is the nature of secret government organizations. The only way to protect the people's privacy is not to let the government collect that information in the first place." Thank you very much.
Well, I believe